welcome to part 20, the final part of our Firebase real-time chat app series. So first and foremost, if you've gotten through this entire series, major congrats to you. It's been a long while to get here, but we've got a pretty nice app. So in this video, what we're gonna do is take a look at fixing some small performance bugs, documenting our code, wrapping up some organization of our code, things like that we really want to do. I'm also going to push this code and be sharing the GitHub. This is already public. I don't think I've added it to any of the videos. So I'm going to add this link to all the part descriptions. I will also add a README here so you all can know a quick overview of what's in the project and all that good stuff. So let's get started by, I guess, cleaning up the project. So we're going to open this up. And whoops, we don't want to open up the proj, we want to open up the XC workspace. And the first thing I want to do is we're going to do a Command-Shift-F, and we're going to search for self dot. And the reason we're going to search for this is we might have some retain loops for memory, and actually I see one right here. And we want to fix these because this actually harms how much memory we're using, and it makes our app not perform as well. So before actually we even do this, if you select a simulator up here, I can show you guys a cool little thing. And we go ahead and hit run. And once the simulator decides to load, I'll show you guys where you can go and actually look at how much memory your app is using and all that good stuff. And you can imagine it with big apps at scale, things like Facebook and Instagram, performance is really important. So I would strongly encourage everyone to, if not dive into the weeds, at least get a good understanding of the fact that we need to care about it. So now that the app is running, you can come over here and hit this tab, and you can see that we're using just over 30 megabytes of memory. So we can click on this, and you get this really cool view actually. And as we use our app, you'll see that the memory will probably go up. So let's say I click into this conversation, and it loads in stuff. You can see the memory spiked here. And that kind of makes sense because we went and made a network call, we loaded more stuff in. Now, sometimes you might have cases where you're leaking memory, so you'll see this climb up and up until your app eventually crashes. There's a bunch of things you can go through in here. You can go through your threads, you can go through how much battery life your app is using, you can go through networking. It's really pretty cool. And, I know several engineers that do just performance full time, and it's a really, really cool field if you're interested. So I strongly encourage taking a look at these, even briefly. So let's go ahead and stop the app, and let's take care of some of these really simple memory leaks. So I'm going to search for self dot, and we're going to go and delete any of the places we can get rid of self. So the first one here is in our extension, and I believe we can get rid of these. No reason to reference self. And this is again in extensions.swift. We added these handy convenience properties. And you might be wondering why I'm looking for self dot. The reasoning is if you're in a closure and you're using self dot, it's a pretty easy culprit to find of memory leaks. So these ones in general won't really fix any performance. It just cleans up the verbose nature of our code. So certainly doesn't hurt to delete it. Make sure you periodically hit Command B to build to make sure you didn't break anything. And let's keep on trucking forward. So here we are in our database manager. We don't need that self. So here's a memory leak, and this is what we were looking at before. Notice we're calling self in a closure, this whole asynchronous block, so that implicitly retains a reference to this class, which is the database manager. So we should be using always, always, always in these types of situations, weak self. And if you need it to be unwrapped to strong, you can do a strong self optional bind with a guard statement. Because you do need to put self here to reference this because you're in a block, but you don't want to reference off of self directly. You want to reference off of strong self. And let's see, where else we're using self in here. Looks like we're using it there as well. And let's go back to the Command-Shift-F to do the project-wide search. And let's see, strong self, that looks good. We don't need to change that. We do want to change this one though. Hit Command B, make sure we're still building. Looking good. Moving on, strong self is good. Strong self. And strong self. Still looking good. So you'll notice that as we were going, we use strong self in a variety of places, but I think it's natural that sometimes we introduce these little uh-oh moments, I guess. So here's another one. So in this async block, we should be using a reference to weak self. So we are going to throw weak self in over there, and we're going to unwrap it to strong self. And this will always succeed. There's very, very rare conditions where this doesn't succeed. But we can use this now. Let's hit Command B, make sure that I didn't break anything. Moving on. Let's see, we don't even need these self statements, do we? This is not an initializer, so we can get rid of that. And we can get rid of that guy. Here we're already using weak self, and we've called it off of self optional, so this one looks good to me. Basically equivalent to using strong self unwrapped. So on this one, we also do not need this guy. We're using optional here, so that looks good. Moving on, this is strong self, that's good. This one is strong self as well. Strong self, strong self. And you'll notice these async blocks end up being all over your project because the nature of mobile in general and just the nature of like fetching data, you're gonna need async blocks more often than not. I would be very, very surprised if there was any type of app that didn't have async blocks, barring maybe like a game. Like I'm sure an app like Flappy Bird didn't have that many async blocks. So moving on, still looking good. I think I just saw one. Nope, just kidding. Still looking good. Still looking good. Do we need the self here? I don't think so. Could just use URL. Moving on. And I think same thing in here. We do not need this self. Get rid of that guy. And these are all self-optional already because we are doing weak self, which is great. Hopefully there's not too many more. So in this case, we're saying the results are going to be users filtered. So we don't need a self because it's smart enough to basically figure out we're referencing it on the same class anyways. And result, is this an initializer? It is not. And the reason I keep asking if it's an initializer is because in the initializer, there is a certain scenario, where we do need to use self. And actually, this is one of those scenarios. And the reason we need to use it here is because our local property is called results, and then the property on our class is called results too. So basically, we do need to disambiguate for the compiler which results we're referring to. So that one looks good. Let's see, do we need self here? I really don't think we need it here. And we don't need these either. You can hold option and click drag, and you can select multiple lines and have multiple cursors like that. Always pretty cool. And I think that's looking good. Did that already. And let's see, what do we have going on over here? User default, I don't know why it highlighted those. And let's keep on going. Keep on going. Ooh, I think I just saw one. Nope, this is strong self as well. Rather, this image view is already above here, so it doesn't need to be strong self. So what else? Let's keep going. So what is this one? So in this one, we are switching on the type for the profile cell view model type, and we're assigning it to self. I don't think we even need these here because this is not an async block. So let's get rid of these. And to full disclosure, having the self in these cases is totally functional and valid and does not have a performance hit. It just adds kind of unnecessary boilerplate code. So, we just prefer to get rid of it. So this is a good example. So we have an initializer, and we could get rid of some of these because the names collide, but it's just better practice to leave them just to signal it's a constructor. And I think that should be most of the blocks. So here we're printing this out. So this looks good, nothing in the async block. I'll also mention, because I didn't do it for the course, but basically we should put alert actions in here. If anything fails, we should let the user know, hey, we weren't able to send your message or upload your photo or whatever the call may be. We just left it empty because we were lazy, and that's okay for this course of videos. And let's see, what do we have going on over here? So we have our location. Is this an async block? Looks like we are creating a message to tap message, and then we're presenting this controller. We don't need the self here, even though it's not an async block. We also don't need the self here when we tap on a image. So this looks good. Let's see, what else are we doing? So here we're using weak self, I believe. Yep, this looks good. Let's go ahead and hit Command R, make sure things are still compiling and working. And let's see if that memory usage went down. I don't think it probably went down too much. We didn't have too many leaks. But we originally started with 31 and we're at 32 now. So basically the same. It was 31.8 the first time. So just good practice to get rid of those memory leaks. So one thing I remember we did in the last video, or maybe 2 videos ago, is we allowed the user to show, or rather see the location when we tap onto one of these location messages. But I actually forgot to do one thing which broke it. So if we try to send a location again, you notice the picker isn't there. And the reason it's not there, if we go to chat view controller, which we're in already, and look for that location picker, on the location picker, so in this function, we have tapped on a message. We just want to not allow picking. We added a property called pickable, and we never assigned it. So I'm going to say vc dot, I think it was called pickable, selectable. What did I call it? Let's go into this location picker view controller and see what I called it. So you'll see in the viewDid load we use isPickable. Oh, isPickable, that's what I called it. Okay. So when we click in a message, we don't want to allow what gives. I think it's private actually. Let's see. Where is isPickable? Let's see. I see map. I see isPickable, and it is in fact private. And we'll make this public. And actually, let's see. Why did I make it private? I think in the initializer, what we say is isPickable is false. So this will always be false. So that's actually not what we want. So we can actually leave this private, but what we're going to say is if this is nil, then isPickable. Rather, what we can do, we can be even more clever, and we can get rid of this. And we can basically say isPickable equals whatever the computation of this is. So if the coordinate is nil, aka it's true, isPickable is true. If this is false, isPickable will be false. That way we don't have to externally from the call side update the isPickable for each caller. So I believe that should resolve it. So let's just hit Command R to build and run and validate that. And then we'll look at some code organization and documentation. Let's go to this person and let's try to send a message with a location. So now we can pick. So let me, I don't know, Canada looks cool right now. Let's hit send, and we should send our message like so, and it's there, perfect. So let's clean up this code. So let me stop running the app. Whoops, that's not what we want. We want to stop running the app. And the first thing I guess we'll do is let's just go file by file and basically just clean things up instead of jumping around. So let's go to resources and start in the app delegate. So the app delegate doesn't have too much to clean up. One thing that I suggest everybody do is you can put all your extensions or all your delegate conformances and your protocol conformances into an extension, and it just makes things slightly cleaner. So I am going to create an extension off of app delegate and put the conformance here, and we can move both of these Google sign-in function calls. So this one and this other really big one here into here. And if we hit Command B, that should still be compiling. Another good practice is people like to put a mark for the section, like so. And you might be wondering, what the heck is the point of this other than looking like a cool comment? The point is there is a quick jump bar up here, and you'll notice that it actually divvies out when you put a mark, that part of the code. And it's easier, you can imagine, with a file with thousands of lines to quickly jump to a section. So if you have a class that conforms to 45 protocols, you don't need to scroll through it and do a Command F to find everything. It's nice and neat and organized. So other than that, I mean, these are pretty basic delegate functions, so we can leave that as is. We didn't even touch this class, so let's skip that. So here we've got some extensions. So you could add some comments on here. So what I'll do is quickly add a comment to this property we've added for notification name. And you notice when I did 3 slashes, it turned into a different looking comment. And this is called a docstring comment. So we can say this is notification when user logs in. And now what we can do is at the call site, if we try to use this, you'll notice that the string comment that we put up here with the 3 slashes shows up in the autocomplete. So this is really good practice when you are writing code that other people will use, or even for yourself, so you know what the heck the function does that you wrote. So I really like including these, and I do them all the time, both professionally and in my own apps, and of course in all these lessons. So, okay, this class has turned into a monstrosity. So the first thing that I think we should do is add those docstring comments, and then we can talk about refactoring this. I may or may not do it since it's a large class. I might do it after this video and just push it up to GitHub later on so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me do it. So let's start with the docstrings. So the first thing we're going to do up here is we're going to say database manager, a manager object to read and write data to real-time Firebase database, shared instance of class. And let's say you want to prohibit people from instantiating this directly like that in another class. What you could do is you could do private init, and that'll basically force people, let's see, this is complaining, static let shared, and this should be public. And let's see why this is complaining. This is complaining because cannot use instance method database manager without property initializer run before self. Where am I using self? Database manager. I see. Let's get rid of this. Basically, what this forces folks to do now, basically developers in this project, is use the shared instance and not instantiate multiple instances. And the beauty of that is when you're reading and writing data to your database, you don't want to cause various performance issues where, let's say, one controller read some data in the middle of another controller writing data. You can quickly understand how you might run into really weird edge cases. So you always want to have some type of shared singleton. So what does this function do? This function's pretty easy. Get data for path. So this returns just the value. So returns dictionary node at child path. And this one checks if user exists for given email. And the other thing you can do is you can add parameters. So you can do like, let me copy and paste that. So we take in two parameters here. The first one being email, and the second one being completion. And you can specify basically what they are, which is good practice to line them up. So we're going to say email, target email to be checked, and completion is async closure to return with results. And you can wrap these in these backtick operators, and it will change the comment to show that these are special keywords, in this case parameters. There's a few ways you can write out these parameter comments, so this is just one semantic that people like to use, and this indentation is bothering me, so let's fix that. And looks like we already did this one. Let's do this one. Pretty self-explanatory. Gets all users from database, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to sit here and make you guys watch me type all of these. One thing I will mention about this error one, which is important, is we basically use this fail to fetch error case all over the database manager. It's always a good idea to add more specific errors for different error cases. And what you could also do is you can override the description. Whoops. You can override, you can override the localized description. And when you are printing out the error, if you want to supply more context, you can actually specify a string that maps to that error case. So you can say something along the lines of, this means blah failed. So instead of just having a case arbitrarily and having to come back to the code and be like, where is this called? You can actually specify a more in-depth string to kind of help the person debug whatever the error is. So moving on, what do we have in here? We have the storage manager. Allows you to get, fetch, and upload files to Firebase storage. Again, we have this shared singleton, so we can privatize the initializer, so everyone is forced to use this. And basically same thing in here. We actually already added doc strings. It's a pretty force of habit for me now. I had to remember to not include them, and I didn't include them for a lot of these here. So let's close this up. And I'm not going to jump too much into the views per se. Basically same idea. The thing I will mention is for every controller, you might want to think about adding the term final ahead of it. So final basically just indicates that no other object or class can subclass it or inherit from it. So if we try to do something like foo, and we try to do this, it'll start complaining that this is a final object and we cannot inherit from it. If we give it a second, it should start complaining. It looks like we have an error elsewhere. There it goes. So it's a good idea to add final basically to anything you know is a final object, hence the name final. Again, you can add doc strings to class declarations too, so we can say controller that shows list of conversations. And then these models we kind of just threw in here, so let's go ahead and let's see, we have in here a latest message and a conversation. So I'm going to grab these and we're going to create a new file over here under our models group, which we literally put nothing under. So let's do new file. And for those of you who asked what the difference between Cocoa Touch and Swift file is, you're going to see it right now. We're going to create a Swift file called conversation models, and we're simply going to paste that in here. All of these types are part of Foundation, so we don't need to import anything else. It just cleans up where we have basically put our code. And I think we also put a bunch of other random models in our chat view controller. If we come all the way up here, yeah, we've got a bunch of models in here. So let's go ahead and grab this, 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 and this. And we're gonna move all of these. We're gonna make this final. And let's make this one, we're gonna say this is chat models. And we are gonna want to import core location in here because one of these models has a core location symbol. So go ahead and hit Command B. And I think we also need to import message kit. That's the other thing we want because we use the message kit protocols. Hit Command B. Should be building now. Fingers crossed. Looking good. And let's see, where else do we randomly put code we shouldn't have? So these delegates are looking good. Here's another model that is kind of just sitting here. So we could come up here and create another one called, I guess, search results. You could in fact create a new file for each single model. I'm just kind of being lazy and putting them all under kind of groups. So we can put search results in there. And let's see, what else do we want to clean up? So we're not even actually using this controller for the video player since we're using the built-in one. So we're going to go ahead and delete this. Let's go ahead and move it to trash. And these are all implemented, I believe, at this point. They should be, in fact. So they are. So let's add final to all of these. Let's also add it to this one. It looks like we have some other random stuff up here that we can move out to a model. So in this case, we have the profile view model and the profile view model type. So we're gonna come again to models and create a new file. And this is going to be profile view model. Go ahead and paste that in right there. I think these are all vanilla foundation types, so no need to import anything. And let's see, what more do we want to do? Is this guy final? Let's make this guy final as well. And let's do this one as well. And the login and registration. So login and registration we can severely improve too with like some pretty hardcore validation of let's say we want the password to only have alphanumeric, or we only want the email to be certain domains like Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, things like that. We could do those validations. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not going to do it in the series, but if you guys want to add it. Another thing I'll call out because several people asked, I'm not going to implement it, but several people had asked how group chat would work in this context. So in our chat view controller, how do we show messages from multiple people? And it's quite simple actually. In a group, we represent each message with a sender. So let me actually open this up so you guys can see it. So we represent each message coming from a sender, and we have a corresponding avatar in here from that person. So MessageKit totally supports different senders. So in your database over here, all you would do is you need to set up your conversation ownership. So you can pull out the conversations where every member of the group is a participant. And every time that person sends a new message, you would just tack it on into your conversation collection, into any of these. You can see I was testing here, so I've got a bunch of these conversations now. But basically, you would just tack it on in here, and the sender would actually have the email address for sender email of whatever group participant it is. And then on the rendering side, you would just use a sender model, which is a part of our chat models. And that sender model will have the data for that given group member. So it's very, very similar. You do have to update your database schema a little bit, but nothing too crazy. And let's see, what else do we want to do? I think that's about it that I really wanted to cover. I don't want to make this video longer than it is and drag it out, but that is roughly it. We've got our launch image, we've got our app icon, app is functional. We can delete stuff. Let's get rid of that. And well, that's not good. Looks like we just crashed there. Let's try that one more time. So let's go ahead and try to delete a new conversation. I'm going to start a conversation with, I think I signed up a new user called Dan. So let me start Dan's conversation, and we're gonna go to the existing prior one, and we're just gonna say, hey, since I already had this conversation, adds it here, and then we're gonna try to delete Dan's conversation. And it looks like we crashed in here. So let's see why we're crashing. So this is actually a really good example of how to debug stuff. So definitely application needs work. It's not perfect, but let's see what happened. We're saying self-to-conversation, remove at index path index.row. When we delete it, and here it is saying that thread 1 fatal error, index out of range. So the reason actually it's out of range, so this is interesting. The reason it's out of range is our database manager already does this update. And actually, I know when I wrote this, I had a hunch this was going to be an issue. So we can say in here, if self.conversations.count is greater than or equal to the position in the index path that we want to delete, then we can delete it. So let's see why this is complaining. This is going to be complaining. Value optional type int must be unwrapped. So let me unwrap this. So guard let's count equals this. Otherwise return. And we can say if the count of elements in the collection is greater than or equal to that index path, then we can go ahead and delete. Otherwise, we don't want to delete because our database real-time function that is listening for conversation updates will already delete it, so it will result in a crash as you saw. So let's go try to do that one more time before I wrap up this video. So again, let me find Dan. Let's open up Dan's conversation, and we're gonna say, here is another test. Let's go ahead and send it. Let's come back here. Let's try to delete it, and it looks like we still crashed. That's not good. So let's see why we are crashing still. The out of bounds. So in here, we are going to say database manager, share, delete conversation. So one approach we could take is we could remove this model from, remove this call to remove the model directly because we're already removing it in our database update. So let's go ahead and see if that's a clean solution. Otherwise, what we can do is we can remove the model outside of the database manager call itself. Whichever way is cleanest for us and slightly subjective preference so we don't crash. So fingers crossed, another final message. And we get it here and we delete it and we don't have a crash. Oh man, it looks like we do have a crash. That's not good. Fourth time's the charm. So let's come back here and let's see what we've got going on. So the first thing we're doing is we're getting a delete action and conversations remove at index path.row. So I am going to get rid of this and let's delete it here. And let's see, we delete rows at that index path, which is fine. And then database manager will change this to if did not succeed. We're gonna print failed to delete and hit Command R. And let's see what we got going on here. This can just be self now since we're not in the closure. And you guys can definitely tell that I definitely don't script any of my videos, and this is really practical. So bear with me. Whoops, we don't want that conversation. We want a conversation with Dan. And we're gonna go into here and fingers crossed. We get our new conversation back here and we're gonna delete it again. And no crash this time. So basically what was happening before is when we make this database manager update call, essentially we're deleting it from our database, obviously, but we're also listening up here in the start listening call not in here, well actually yes, in here, in the conversation. We're also listening for updates. So there is a double call to delete that model because not only is the model deleted when the conversations in the database change, but we're also deleting it here. So there is a duplicate deletion. So what we could do, one approach is just delete it outside of the database call from the collection of conversations and the row. And if we fail, what we could do is we could basically add it back add model and row back and show error alert if we fail. Very unlikely we're going to fail. It has to be basically no internet or some really weird exception on Google Firebase's part. The reason we have a warning here is because we have weak self, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So go ahead and hit Command B. Everything should be building now. Let's quickly add that README, and then we will wrap this up. So we're going to open up Terminal. We're going to cd into the project. We're going to add everything. We're going to add a commit message, and we are going to say wrap up project. And then I'm going to do a git push as well. So this is pushing up, and it has successfully pushed to our Git repo, which is here on GitHub. It's called Swift Chat Apps. And if you go to the commits tab here, you'll notice that all the commits that I've made over the course of all these videos are available here. And let's quickly look at adding a README. So let's see, where are we? We should be in the root of our project, which we are. So we can say touch readme.md, and then we're going to use Atom to open up the README. Just a text editor. You can use Xcode if you want. I just like using Atom for these types of things. And we're going to use markup to add some content. So we're going to say messenger real-time chat app. And actually, now that I think about it, let me show it to you guys in Xcode, because in Atom here, we don't actually get markup rendering, but if we open it up here, you notice this title is bigger, and this is more symbolic of what it will look like on GitHub or any place Markdown is rendered. So we're going to say a beginner's Swift project that makes a beginner's Swift project to create a real-time chat application in Swift 5 using Firebase. And we are going to say features, Facebook login, Google sign-in, email pass, registration, login, photo messages, video messages, what else? Real-time conversations, location messages, search for users, deleting, conversations. What else did we do? We also had a profile, user profile, dark mode support, and I think I'll leave the list there. Those are mainly the important things. And wow, we actually did quite a bit. So and then I'm going to say, take a look at the free playlist on YouTube for a step-by-step guide how to build this project. And I think that's good enough for our README. So I am going to do a Command W to close that. I am going to do a Command Q to close Xcode. I hit enter to stop running our app. We're going to do a git add, a git status. Let's try that again. And I'm going to do a git commit. We're going to say add readme. And we're going to do a git push. And looks like we have pushed. Done. Cool. Let's come over here and refresh. And we have our readme here. So looking pretty good. So that is it. Super big congrats to all of you. Super big thank you to all of you for everyone that followed along. I know some of these videos get really long. I know they get boring sometimes, but be very proud of yourself. A lot more series and courses to come. I've got a TikTok series and an Instagram series I'm working on. So stay tuned for those. If you haven't smashed that like button down below, please make sure to do so for the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't smashed the like button for the previous parts, make sure you go back and do that as well. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you have any comments, errors, questions, leave them down below. What I would also suggest, if you want to, on GitHub, you can open up issues. So if you have any issues with the project, feel free to open up an issues in the issues tab, and I'll try to get back to every single person within some reasonable amount of time. If you want to extend the functionality, by all means, extend it and shoot me over a GitHub link, and I would be super, super excited to see it. It would be super impressive. That said, thanks for watching. Thanks for staying the whole course, and I'll catch you guys in the next series with the next video.